The first thing Jonah Reddick saw was not the woman. It was a red leather book half buried in white tied to a wrist already turning blue. Then the snow moved. A young woman lay curled beneath it, one cheek streaked with blood, her wool coat ripped open by thorn and ice. When Jonah reached down, her eyes snapped wide. "Don't let him lock me underground again." Jonah had lived alone long enough to ignore most trouble, but no man who heard a sentence like that could pretend he had found only a stranger. The Bitterroot winter of 1885 had shut whole valleys behind walls of snow. Even the elk had dropped below the timberline, and Jonah should have done the same. He had gone out only because two of his trap lines ran along Lolo Ridge, and a hard freeze could ruin a month's work by morning. He moved through the storm on rawhide snowshoes, a Remington rolling block rifle over one shoulder, his beard stiff with ice. He was 42, broad through the chest, and carried himself with the stillness of a man who had once survived by noticing what other men missed. That was why the red book caught his eye, not because red was bright, because there should not have been anything red on that mountain. He knelt beside the woman and pressed two fingers under her jaw. Her pulse fluttered weakly. Blood had dried along her temple. A narrow brass chain ran from the leather book to a cuff around her wrist. Jonah looked uphill. A snapped sleigh runner jutted from the drift. One horse lay dead against a pine. Farther back, half filled by wind, were the broken tracks of 3 riders. Not an accident, a hunt. Jonah cut the brass chain with his skinning knife, tucked the book inside her coat, and lifted her. She weighed almost nothing. The trip to his cabin took an hour that felt like 3. Twice the storm erased the trail behind him. Once the ridge groaned beneath the snowpack, and Jonah had to angle through black timber while the slope above them settled with the deep sound of distant thunder. By the time he shouldered open his door, the woman had stopped shivering. That frightened him more than the blood. He laid her near the stove, fed pine knots into the iron belly, and filled a kettle with snow. Her clothes were frozen to her skin. If he left them on, the mountain would finish the job quietly. He cut the ruined coat away at the sleeves. The instant his fingers touched the collar of her dress, she came awake fighting. She struck at him with both hands, weak but wild, and dragged herself into the corner beside the stove. "No, no, please." Jonah backed away. His voice dropped until it was gentler than the fire. "Nobody is taking you anywhere." Her eyes moved around the one-room cabin. Rough plank walls, snow packed against the window, a rifle over the door, a bedroll, a table. One man standing several paces away with both hands open. "My name is Jonah Reddick," he said. "You're on the west side of Lolo Ridge. The storm has closed every road for 20 miles. She stared at him as if measuring the distance to the door. Jonah pulled a folded blanket from a chest and set it on the floor between them. "Those clothes will kill you. I am going to face the wall and make tea. You can wrap yourself in that blanket, or you can keep the coat and let the cold choose for you." He turned his back. For a while, there was only the crackle of pitch and the wind clawing at the roof. Then he heard wet fabric fall to the floor. Jonah kept his eyes on the stove. It was the first promise he made her, and the first one she believed. For 2 days the blizzard held them inside. The woman said her name was Lydia, nothing more. Jonah treated the cut at her temple with boiled water and clean cloth. He rubbed snow-burned fingers with bear grease, gave her broth in small cups, and left food within reach without watching her eat. He did not ask about the bruises around her wrists. He did not ask why a book had been chained to her hand. He did not ask what she meant by underground. That silence unsettled Lydia more than questions would have. Men in her old life always wanted something. An explanation, gratitude, obedience, fear. Jonah seemed willing to let the room remain unfinished. On the 3rd morning, the storm broke. Sunlight struck the snow so hard it filled the cabin with a cold blue glare. Jonah stood at the window, shaving frost from the glass with the edge of a spoon. 3 dark shapes circled in the valley below. Ravens, not riders, not yet. Behind him, Lydia sat at the table wearing one of his flannel shirts beneath the blanket. The red leather book rested in her lap. "You know they're coming," she said. Jonah did not turn. "I know somebody followed you into a storm bad enough to kill his own horse." Her fingers tightened around the brass corners of the book. "His name is Corbin Vale." That got Jonah's attention. He faced her slowly. Corbin Vale owned cattle from the Missouri Breaks to the western valleys. More important, he owned paper, freight contracts, survey contracts, county notes, newspaper debt. Men called him a businessman because the alternative was calling him what he was, a thief with judges. Lydia watched recognition settle across Jonah's face. "He is my husband." The words landed without drama. That made them worse. Lydia had been the daughter of a failing hotel keeper in Helena. Vale paid the mortgage, then married the debt. In public, she wore silk beside him at dinners. In private, he decided which doors locked from the outside. "The cellar was below his office," she said. "No windows, no clock. He put me there when I asked where the homestead deeds came from." Jonah's jaw shifted. Lydia opened the red book. Inside were columns of section numbers, acreage, payments, and initials. Folded between the pages were original land receipts carrying federal seals, some signed by people Jonah knew had died years before. Vale's syndicate had learned where a proposed railroad spur might run. He bought the county surveyor, altered boundary lines, and filed false abandonment claims against families living on valuable ground. When a farmer resisted, Vale sent men to burn a barn or poison a well. When a widow refused, a deputy arrived with papers she had never signed. The book did not merely show theft, it showed the order of it. Survey first, threat second, fire third, purchase last. A whole valley had been stolen in ink before anyone came to take it with a gun. "I copied his private index," Lydia said. "Then I took the originals he kept as insurance against his own partners." Jonah turned a page. One entry listed a payment to a deputy named Thaddeus Pike. Jonah stopped there. Lydia saw it. "You know him. I know the kind of man who enjoys collecting twice." Pike had once worked as a stock detective, tracking rustlers for cattle companies. Then he discovered it paid better to call any poor rancher a rustler and take his herd after the hanging. Jonah closed the book. "Where were you going?" "The Federal Land Office in Missoula. There is an examiner there named Samuel Orr. My father's old clerk wrote that Orr has been asking why whole sections keep changing hands after winter fires." Jonah looked out at the ridge again. Missoula was nearly 60 miles away by a pass that might not open for weeks. "The road is buried," he said. "I know. Pike will expect the road. I know that too. And if he reaches this cabin before we leave, he'll burn it around us." Lydia's face went pale, but she did not look away. Jonah set the book on the table. "A map can lie," he said. "Snow can't. It keeps the weight of every man who crosses it." He pointed toward the eastern slope. "There's an old survey cut through the timber. Too steep for a wagon, too narrow for a horse in deep snow. We can take it on foot and reach the Blackfoot Trail below the pass." Lydia stared at him. "You would go with me?" Jonah's expression did not change. "I'm not going with you." He lifted the red book. "I'm taking this to Missoula. You happen to be attached to it." For the first time since he had found her, Lydia almost smiled. The smile vanished when Jonah placed a Winchester carbine on the table. "Before we leave, you learn this." Her eyes fixed on the rifle. "I have never fired one, neither has anyone until they do." He took her outside behind the cabin. The mountain had gone silent after the storm. Snow hung heavy on the fir branches. Jonah set a blackened coffee tin on a stump 30 yards away. Lydia held the Winchester too loosely. Jonah stood beside her, not behind. He showed her how to seat the stock against her shoulder, how to wrap her hand around the forend, how to put the front sight where she wanted the bullet to arrive. "Do not fight the rifle," he said. "Give it a place to push." She breathed out and fired. The shot went high. Lydia flinched at the sound and turned her face away. Jonah levered in another round. Again. The second shot struck snow near the stump. The third clipped the edge of the tin. By the eighth, she hit it clean. The tin spun into the drift. Lydia lowered the rifle, startled by the fierce satisfaction rising in her chest. Jonah nodded once. "Fear is useful when it tells you where danger is. After that it starts charging rent." She looked at him. "Is that what you did? Stopped paying?" Jonah picked up the tin. "No. I moved where the landlord couldn't find me." That afternoon they prepared to leave. Jonah packed dried venison, coffee, cartridges, lamp oil, a canvas ground sheet, and a small survey compass he had not touched in years. Lydia wrapped the red book in oilskin and tied it beneath her coat. Before dusk, Jonah walked into the trees and built a second fire inside an abandoned charcoal shed. He fed it green pine so the smoke would climb thick and black above the ridge. Then he and Lydia left the cabin cold. They followed the old survey cut east under moonlight. Moving in the narrow shadow between pines, Jonah broke trail. Lydia stepped exactly where he stepped. After 2 hours they heard riders below. Pike had come with 5 men. From the shoulder of the ridge, Jonah watched them approach the charcoal smoke. The riders spread out around the shed. One kicked open the door. Nothing. The trap Jonah had left was not powder or seal, it was time. While Pike's men searched the false camp, Jonah and Lydia gained another mile. Lydia looked back at the smoke. You knew they would follow what they could see. Most men do. And what do you follow? Jonah glanced at the compass in his hand. What's still true when nobody is looking? They pushed until midnight. The survey cut narrowed above a frozen creek, then vanished beneath a slope of wind-loaded snow. Jonah stopped so suddenly Lydia almost walked into him. A line of fresh powder had slumped across the trail. He knelt and touched it. The surface cracked around his glove. "Step where I step," he whispered. No talking. They moved one at a time. Halfway across, a rifle fired from the dark timber behind them. The bullet struck a tree above Jonah's shoulder. The impact shook loose a shelf of powder. The mountain answered. A slab of snow broke across the slope with a sound like canvas tearing from the sky. Jonah grabbed Lydia and threw both of them behind a granite outcrop as the white mass rushed past, swallowing the trail below. Trees snapped. The creek disappeared. Two of Pike's riders screamed once, then the avalanche took the sound. When the snow settled, the world had changed shape. Jonah lifted his head. Lydia was beneath him, alive, staring at the white cloud moving down the canyon. "You saved me," she whispered. "Do not make a habit of needing it." But his hand remained around the back of her neck a moment longer than necessary. They climbed before Pike could find another route. By dawn, Lydia's boots had filled with blood from split heels. Jonah cut strips from the canvas ground sheet and bound her feet without complaint. At noon they reached an abandoned line shack beside an old toll road. The roof sagged, but the chimney stood. Jonah allowed a small smokeless fire in melted snow. Lydia watched him study the red book again. "You understand those marks," she said. Jonah ran a thumb over a page showing township lines. "I used to. Before the cabin, before the traps, before the mountain, Jonah had worked as a civilian guide for Army survey parties. He knew how a single line on a page could move a road, change a claim, or turn a family into trespassers on its own land. In 1877, he had guided a detachment into a valley south of Fort Benton. The order said settlers there were occupying reserved ground. Jonah marked the trail. The soldiers removed the families. A week later, a cattle company filed on the same acreage. "I told myself I had only shown them the way," Jonah said. Lydia's voice softened. "And what happened to the families? One froze that winter. Two disappeared, the rest scattered." The fire shifted between them. Jonah stared at the book. Paper drew the line. "Men like me made it real." Lydia reached across the floor and placed her hand over his, not on his wrist. "Not to stop him, just there. You are making a different line now." Jonah looked at her hand on his. Outside, a branch snapped. He killed the fire with one sweep of his boot. Pike had found them. A voice drifted through the wall. "Reddick, I know you're in there." Jonah slid the rolling block rifle into his hands. Pike spoke as if addressing an old friend. "Vale wants his wife breathing. He doesn't care how much of you comes back with her." Lydia moved toward the rear window. Jonah caught her sleeve and shook his head. Two shadows crossed the snow outside, then a third. Pike had fewer men after the avalanche, but not few enough. Jonah leaned close to Lydia. "The back wall opens onto a ravine. When I fire, you go through the window and follow the creek north. What about you? I will count to 30, then follow." "No," his eyes hardened. "Lydia." She lifted the Winchester. "I am not the woman you carried out of the snow." Jonah studied her face. No panic. "Not gone. Mastered." He gave one short nod. Then he fired through the door. The fight lasted less than a minute. It felt long enough to age both of them. Jonah dropped the first man as he rushed the porch. Lydia fired through the rear window and drove another into cover. Bullets punched through the plank walls, throwing splinters across the room. Pike stayed out of sight. That was what made him dangerous. Jonah reloaded, shifted left, and saw a flash of movement near the woodpile. Too late. Pike's rifle cracked. Jonah folded against the wall. The bullet entered high along his side and tore out beneath his shoulder blade. He stayed conscious, but the rifle slipped from his fingers. Lydia fired toward the woodpile. Pike vanished behind the shack. "Go," Jonah said through his teeth. She knelt beside him. Blood spread under his coat. "Can you stand?" "That was not the order. I have had enough of men giving me orders." She dragged his arm across her shoulders and pulled him toward the rear window. A bullet struck the sill as they dropped into the ravine. They slid 20 feet through loose snow, hit the frozen creek, and crawled beneath the overhang of the bank while Pike's men fired blindly from above. Jonah's blood marked the snow. Lydia took one look at it and began covering the trail with branches as they moved. He almost laughed. "What? You learned to read snow?" "I had a difficult teacher." They followed the creek north until Jonah could no longer walk. The old toll house appeared near dusk, leaning against a stand of cottonwoods where the road crossed the river. Its windows were gone. One wall had collapsed, but the stone foundation still held a dry room beneath it. Lydia got Jonah inside. His skin was gray. She cut away his coat, pressed cloth against the wound, and wrapped his chest as tightly as she could. The bullet had passed through without striking bone, but he had lost too much blood. Jonah drifted in and out. Once, he opened his eyes and found Lydia sitting beside him with the red book in her lap and the Winchester across her knees. "Leave me the rifle," he said. "No, take the book. No, Missoula is 2 days if you keep moving. Then we will arrive in 3. He tried to rise and failed. Lydia bent close. "Listen to me. Vale built his whole life on people believing the paper more than the person standing in front of them. I will not do that to you. You say you are dead weight. I say you are alive." She tightened the bandage. "And I am the one holding the line now." Jonah's eyes closed, but his hand found hers before he slept. That night the temperature dropped hard enough to split river ice. Lydia fed tiny sticks into a hidden fire and kept one hand against Jonah's throat, counting each pulse. Near midnight she heard a horse on the road. Only one. A shadow moved past the open window. Pike stepped into the toll house with a revolver in his left hand and dried blood across the right side of his face. The avalanche had taken his hat and part of one ear. His coat was torn. His eyes were bright with cold and fury. He looked at Jonah first, then at Lydia. "Give me the book." Lydia stood between them. Pike smiled. "Vale said you always became sensible after a night underground." Her breath caught. Pike saw it. He took one step closer. There she is. The room shrank. Stone floor, broken wall, Jonah bleeding behind her. The old fear rose exactly where it always had, in her throat, in her hands, in the small place inside her that still expected the door to lock. Then Lydia remembered the coffee tin spinning into snow. Fear is useful when it tells you where danger is. After that, it starts charging rent. She raised the Winchester. Pike's smile faded. "You will miss, then stand still." He fired first. The bullet struck the wall beside her, filled the air with chips of stone. Lydia did not close her eyes. She pressed the stock into her shoulder, gave the rifle a place to push, and squeezed. Pike staggered backward. The round struck beneath his collarbone. His revolver fell. He tried to speak, but only blood came. Lydia kept the sights on him until he dropped to his knees. Then until he fell forward. Then until the room was quiet again. Jonah opened his eyes. Lydia lowered the rifle. "I did not miss." "No," he whispered, "you did not." At first light, she searched Pike's coat. Inside, she found a deputy's badge, $40, and a folded telegram from Vale. "Recover book, womanus if damaged, no witnesses." Lydia read it twice, then she handed it to Jonah, a second piece of evidence, not hidden in a ledger, written by Vale himself. Jonah managed to sit up against the wall. That wire was sent through a public office. Lydia understood. The operator kept a copy, and the receiving station logged it. For the first time, Corbin Vale's arrogance had created proof outside his own control. The Red Book could expose the system. The telegram could tie him directly to the killing. That changed their problem. They no longer needed to reach only one honest examiner. They needed to reach any telegraph key before Vale reached every office ahead of them. By afternoon, Jonah could stand with a branch under one arm. Lydia took Pike's horse and made a travois from 2 lodgepole saplings and the remaining canvas. Jonah objected until she tied him to it. "You have become unpleasant," he said. "I had an excellent teacher." They traveled east along the river. On the second evening, they saw smoke from Frenchtown. It was a small settlement of mills, freight yards, and muddy streets pressed against the winter dark. The telegraph office stood beside the depot, its windows glowing amber. So did the sheriff's office across the road. Jonah stopped beneath the shadow of a lumber stack. "Vale owns county men." Lydia touched the book under her coat. "Then we do not give it to county men." They entered the depot through the freight room. The telegraph operator was a narrow-faced woman named Mrs. Klein, old enough to have stopped being impressed by urgent men. Lydia placed the Red Book, the original receipts, Pike's badge, and Vale's telegram on the counter. Mrs. Klein read the message. Her face changed. "Who do you need?" "Samuel Orr at the Missoula Land Office, the territorial governor's secretary in Helena, and the editor of the Independent." Mrs. Klein looked at the book. "That is a long transmission. Start with the names of the deputies, the section numbers, and the wire ordering no witnesses." The operator sat at the key. The first click sounded small. Then they filled the room. Across the road, the sheriff stepped out into the snow. 3 armed men followed him. Jonah saw them through the depot window. "We have company." Mrs. Klein did not stop sending. The sheriff crossed the street and hammered on the depot door. "Open in the name of the county." Jonah checked the cylinder of Pike's revolver. Lydia stood beside the telegraph key. The sheriff struck the door again. Then something unexpected happened. A mill worker waiting for the night freight read one of the names Lydia had laid on the counter. "That is my brother's claim." Another man stepped closer. He recognized a section number near 9 Mile Creek. A woman in a flour-dusted coat saw the signature of her dead husband on a receipt dated 2 years after his burial. The room changed, not loudly, not all at once. People simply stopped standing apart. The mill worker slid a freight bar through the door handles. The woman took a shotgun from beneath the ticket counter. 2 teamsters pushed a crate against the side entrance. Jonah looked at Lydia. This was the part Vale had never understood. A stolen family could be frightened. A valley of stolen families could become a wall. The sheriff shouted from outside. Mrs. Klein kept sending, name by name, section by section, payment by payment. At last she reached Vale's telegram. No witnesses. The key repeated the words toward Missoula, Helena, and the newspaper press. Once the message crossed the wire, Corbin Vale could no longer lock it in a cellar. The sheriff left before dawn. Not because he had grown honest, because too many people now knew where to look if anyone disappeared. Samuel Orr arrived from Missoula the next afternoon with a federal deputy marshal and 2 clerks. They sealed the red book in an evidence box, copied every page, and took sworn statements from Lydia, Jonah, Mrs. Klein, and the families whose land appeared in the index. Within 10 days, federal officers seized Vale's survey records in Helena. Within a month, 3 deputies fled the territory, 1 county judge resigned, and Corbin Vale was arrested while trying to board an eastbound train under another name. The case took longer than the newspapers promised. Cases always did, but the book broke his protection. The forged claims were suspended. Families returned to ground they had been told no longer belonged to them. Some received their land back, some received money, some received only the truth of who had taken it. It was not perfect justice. It was real enough to leave a mark. Jonah spent 6 weeks recovering in a room above the Frenchtown Mercantile. Lydia visited every morning. At first she brought broth, then newspapers, then pieces of lumber pricing. Jonah eyed the list in her hand. "What is that? Cabin timber. My cabin is still standing." "The roof leaks." "It did not leak before you arrived. It had not met me yet." By early spring they rode back toward Lolo Ridge. Snow still filled the shadows, but water ran beneath it. Jonah's wound pulled when he climbed. Lydia slowed without being asked. At the cabin, the false fire had blackened the charcoal shed, but the house remained untouched. Lydia stood on the porch and looked toward the place where Jonah had found her. "I thought the mountain was going to bury me." Jonah set down the pack. "It nearly did." She turned to him. But it was the first place he could not reach. Jonah looked across the white ridge. For years he had believed solitude was the same thing as peace. The mountain had been quiet because he had removed every person who might ask him to answer for the past. Lydia had arrived carrying proof that lines could be redrawn, not on paper, in a life. She stepped closer and placed the red book's broken brass chain in his palm. The federal clerks had returned it after cutting the evidence seal. "I do not want to keep this," she said. Jonah closed his fingers around the chain. "Then do not." He threw it into the stove. The brass darkened. The last link snapped in the heat. Lydia took his hand. Outside, spring water moved under the snow, finding its own path down the mountain. The book had drawn the line that trapped her. Together they chose where it ended.